I'm
Hi.
wearing the most coolest t-shirt on earth right now.
I should have worn it too, hey.
How have you been ever since the event?
Oh, dude, I've just been wrecked. I think I like in my email to you, I think I was experiencing a little bit of burnout. So
No.
yeah, straight after I turned off all of my notifications for about a week and a half.
Yeah.
It took like a solid week and then I could start replying and then emailing. Um, but I haven't been able to get to the same pace as before the event. So I think I'm
Yeah.
still slowly recovering.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. It was a very big event though, hey.
I think it took, yeah, in hindsight, I think it took a lot out of me.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize until after it was over. I looked back and I was like, I haven't cooked at my house for about 3 months to save time and to,
Wow.
yeah, I just didn't have the mental capacity to think about like groceries or food and whatnot. And then
Yeah.
now that it's over, I think I feel a lot more rested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so good though. I'm glad that you got a lot of rest and is sleeping and is eating and is just re-energizing yourself as much as you can.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me. Like, I was looking through, all of your past interviewees are like actually talented people. I don't
No.
really do anything. I just
What do you mean? You put me on Kozziecom not even once but twice.
I just exist. So thank you for having me. It's a huge honor, really.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for saying yes. Like, despite everything and being like a bit burned out and all, thank you for saying yes.
Your
Ooh.
questions were really impactful, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't because I when I do like podcasts and interviews and stuff, I don't like to prepare it too much so it sounds clinical. I think sometimes it's whatever answer comes out at that moment that's the most honest.
Yeah.
But I looked through it, and as I was reading through it, I think I just felt yeah, like rejuvenated already.
Wow.
Yeah, so I really appreciate the opportunity. I think it
Mm.
helps me kind of center back on what the vision and purpose of this all was before, you
Yeah.
know.
Wow. I'm so excited to actually like get to know deeply about your thoughts and like how you came alive to this point, you know? And
Yeah.
especially how you were like, oh man, I was really nervous when you were like, "Oh, can you send me some questions?" I was like, "Huh?" Like I was
Sorry.
like stressing where it's like, "Okay, 션 언니한테 질문 잘해야 될 텐데." 막 이러면서 cuz it would normally be you like interviewing people and like writing about them, but it's like the other way around today.
I
So,
know now I'm in the hot seat.
oh yeah. How do you
You have
feel?
all the priorities. Do you do one of these a week? How do you pace yourself?
I do once every fortnightly.
Um,
Mm.
and you balance that with study and on top of all your music commitments too?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's full on.
it is. But
The editing and preparation would take time as well.
it does, but more than anything, like getting to meet someone through this, like I learned so much. So I feel like I'm learning so much. So I'm glad.
Excited. I wish we could have done this in person with a glass of wine, hey?
Ooh, we'll save that for next time for like
Yes.
actual personal stuff.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Oh, let's get started.
Leave it all behind. 넘어져도 다시 일어나.
Hey guys, welcome to the lab where we experiment thoughts about life and leave it all behind. Today we have the founder of Kozziecom, Shona, in the lab with us. Hi, Shona.
I love how you say my name with your American accent.
Wait, how does Australian people say
Shana.
it?
uh, well, when I introduce my name to like people with American accents, I have to say it's Shona, and they're like they understand, but it's Shona, Shona,
Shona.
Shona,
Shona. Yeah, like a few
right?
Australian accent people, like when they mention your name, they're like Shona. Like the O is very like there. I was like, is it
Yeah,
Shona? It sounds like Shana.
Shona.
Shana.
You can call me whatever you want. It's your show.
Oh yeah. So we have Shauna says Shauna. Hey, but
Shona.
then what? How did it come to be Shauna says?
It was one of those names that a while ago, a couple of years ago, I was like, oh, what should I? Shona says, just because I guess I talk a lot.
Ooh.
But there's some of my friends joke and they say you should have called it Shona Listens. So I'm learning to
Ooh.
listen.
Hey, that makes sense. But I like Shauna says because like you're not like verbally saying things, but you're like,
So Shona
what's the
doesn't say, Shona not
like
says.
Shauna says, but y'all need to listen through like
Ooh.
reading, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I
Wow.
was a singer, it would be Shona Sings.
Hey.
Shona Sews. It should be a brand. Yeah.
Well, that rhymes. I like it because it's SSSS.
Mm.
Shauna says, Shauna sings.
Yeah.
Damn. Well,
Shona
before we
gets one.
start, what's a book that impacted your life?
Oh, bro, good question.
It feels like it's so deep, but like,
Yeah, no, it's I don't want to be cliche, but I really have to say Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. That really changed the trajectory of my life, I think, because it opened my eyes to the fact that we can consume Korean stories in English and in a way that's relatable beyond just the traditional stuff. So that was a really powerful story. But then when I got to hear her speak about the book in person and her process of writing it, I think that was really inspiring. She actually has another book called Free Food for Millionaires, and it's quite a thick and then big read, but she introduces a lot of different characters. And Min Jin Lee was talking about how she wanted to write that book so that she could show people that Korean women can be a variety of different personalities and different types of people and identities. And I just found that was so beautiful. So yeah, that really changed my life and inspired me a lot.
wow. Wow. Is that 혹시 빠찡꼬?
Pachinko. Yeah.
맞나? Is that book?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I've never heard it in the English pronunciation,
Oh, true, because it's translated in Korean as well. Hey,
right?
yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's so cool. Well, I wanted to ask you, like, can you give us a little introduction of like who you are, what do you do, who is
Mm.
Shauna for the listeners?
I am an Australian-born Korean. I am a combination of things. My day job is to work for an Australian charity in content management there. And outside of my day job, I also run Kozziecom, which is a platform for Korean Australian stories. I'm a dog mom to a 3-year-old beagle who eats like crazy.
So cute.
Sydney born and bred. What else? I love a good glass of wine.
What's your
And I
favorite
love
wine?
reading. What's my favorite wine? Is that what the question
Recommend,
was?
yes. So whoever is gonna listen
Oh,
to this podcast is gonna be like nighttime. So what's a recommendation of your wine to the listeners who would be listening to this podcast around 9 p.m.?
oh. Okay, well, I'm just going to say I always go for like the $15, $18 bottle wines, and I think they're
Ooh.
just as good as like the $30 wines. So, yeah,
Hey.
red wine's a good one.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It's been like a few years of being COVID as well, but what's like the most, like, what part of life do you miss the most before COVID all happened?
Mm, I actually really struggled to find an answer for this because I feel like life, yes, it has been difficult, but I've actually learned how to implement things that are making my life better since COVID.
Wow.
So there's not a lot that I miss pre-COVID. I think, apart from the basic things that a lot of people would agree with as well, like the logistics of just being able to visit your grandma or your relatives without having to consider whether you're a threat or a risk.
Mm,
But apart from that, yeah, there's not a whole lot that I miss. There's not a whole lot that I can think of. I mean, traveling, but that's slowly starting to come back now. I think
yeah.
there's been a lot more benefits than losses actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what's the biggest gain that you've had so far then?
Oh, the pace has really changed for me. I think before COVID, and I'm sure you can agree with this as well, life was at 120 kilometers an hour every day. There was no break. It was social activities, work, passion projects, going to gym classes, Pilates, and it was nonstop. And that was the norm. You would open your social media and everyone was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But since lockdown, I think it was a really big adjustment at the start. But I feel like now I've gotten into a good routine of having time to just sit and ponder and rest and not have anything planned. And that's really big because my personality is I'm quite a planner. And if I'm not busy, I actually feel, quite restless in quiet
Yeah.
times. But yeah, the lockdown has really taught me that it's okay to operate at a slower pace. And there are times when life will be busy, but it's actually really good to be able to slow down. And I've loved that pace.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, not at all.
I can
Yeah.
so relate to that. And especially like seeing you because you're like a woman boss person who would like nonstop
No,
24/7 work, 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 work. All right? Because you would keep yourself
yeah.
busy. Would you say yes?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah,
And
for
I feel
sure.
the same for me as well. Like these days, it's coming to me where it's like, I feel very lazy, but I
Mm.
feel like it's a good gradual change to be okay with being lazy at times.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
the hardest part about it is that accepting that as a Korean or like as an Asian culture person, because for us, rest is not acceptable.
100%. If you're
Yeah.
sitting there, it's like, don't just sit there, do something, do the dishes, vacuum.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the nature of
Damn.
growing up at home.
That's so
Yeah,
true.
I can
Well,
relate.
talking about like Asian cultures as well, like I know you're a very big advocate for Asian cultures, but what made you like have so much influence upon that area?
I can't, I can't say that I'm, hugely influential. And I'm really grateful that you invited me on this platform. And I think what you're doing is so incredibly important because you're sharing stories and you're inspiring people who are doing things that are outside of your normal, accountant, doctor, lawyer. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think this is a really important platform. I think for me, it kind of started when I was at uni. So I studied media and communications at Sydney Uni, and about 95, 97% of our cohort were white Australians. So they were born and had lived their whole lives here for generations. And I found that as I was, trying to kind of keep up with my peers, the types of stories that I was writing and thinking about were all trying to fit into their context and their experience growing up, in Bondi, having parents who grew up in Bondi. And I was trying to understand that, but I just couldn't speak to that. And then in my final semester, I had the opportunity to do a scholarship in Thailand for one of my units. And through that experience, I started to relate a lot more to Southeast Asian stories. And around that time, I naturally gravitated towards the country of Myanmar. I was really interested and curious about it. And, back then I wasn't sure what about it was so fascinating. But if I think about it now in hindsight, what was really fascinating was Myanmar is a country made up of hundreds of minority groups that live together. I mean, uh, there is a majority in Myanmar, the Burmese people, but there's hundreds of different minority groups. And back then I was really fascinated, like, how do they live together? What are the conflicts like? Or how do they make laws? And I think, yeah, in hindsight, I was already kind of interested in that minority experience. Living in Sydney, obviously, it's really hard to keep up with Southeast Asian happenings unless you're there. I can't access the same sources, I can't access the same stories. Obviously, the language barrier. So coming back to Sydney, I started thinking more about the Asian Australian experience. Um, and a lot of the content that I consumed around Asian Australian stories are predominantly Chinese Australian stories. And, the Chinese Australian community has done so much here for us to even be able to be talking like this today. For us to even have a Koreatown event like what we did wouldn't have been possible without some of the early Chinese Australian communities really paving the way for Asian Australians. So pay full respect to them. But yeah, I was like, where are the Korean stories at? I want to read about different ommas and ajumas and ajoshis in Australia. And the Korean stories that I was consuming at the time were heavily Korean American focused. So,
Yep.
and I love Korean American stories. I think what they're doing over there is incredibly encouraging. But the Korean Australian context is slightly different. And I'm really proud to be Australian born and bred, but I'm also really proud to be Korean as well. And I think I wanted to capture that nuance, and I could relate well to my friends who understand that. And you understand that piece, what it's like to be in that little narrow window of the Korean Australian. And I just thought, there needs to be stories. We need to capture this. So that's kind of the background around why I was interested in Korean Australian stories. And I think naturally, media has always been a part of, my educational background. I love telling stories, just as a person. So I guess the influence part comes in terms of me just talking about things that I care about, and me wanting to see faces like mine and yours on TV. My best friend is an actor, and I see, Australian TV shows, and I'm like, man, my best friend could play that role. And, I just am passionate about that. So naturally I start talking about it. And I think a lot of people have an appetite for that. And a lot of people are also passionate about it. So I guess that's how conversations start.
Wow. Wow. I think that's so amazing. Like, because people like that are always, I guess, in the frontier. And like, you won't notice because you're always there being the voice for the people like behind you. And it's sometimes really hard to be the leader when you don't want to be. And sometimes you're not there to be the leader, but you're just there to collect their stories and to listen to them. But somehow people just pushes you to become the leader. And then at one point you're like, okay, you're the leader, but you don't want to make the call. And sometimes it's like that's the burden for you. And when you
Yeah.
want to step down, it's like people are like, no, 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 you need to be there. That's where you are. And I feel like sometimes you just want to be the person behind the camera. But how do you see yourself? Like, how do you adjust yourself when you need to like put your mask on and be in front of people when you don't want to?
Mm. That's a really, really good question. One example of that would have been, at the Koreatown event, we had a MC, lovely David Park on, who was part of the organizing team as well. And he did an incredible job at just, facilitating artists like yourself to come up on stage and share their crafts. I really didn't want to be, at the, I didn't want to be like a part of, the show, but towards the end, there was an opportunity for me to come out and speak to the crowd. And in moments like that, I think what really, and this is me being really, this is unfiltered, but I think what I really struggle with is I feel like there's so much more that I can be doing, and there are people who are doing more than I am. So when I take up that space, there are often times when I feel like, am I just being a hypocrite? Like, am I just saying this because I'm here right now? Or is this because, can I really follow through with what I believe in? And, I 100% believe in what I say, but I can't guarantee that, as much as I want Kozziecom to be a platform that helps and connects people and helps celebrate the identity, I can't guarantee that I'll be able to do that for the next 10 years. And I think that pressure is really difficult in moments like that. And I feel, I really battle with like, am I worthy of sharing this story? Am I worthy of taking up this space? And I guess the challenge for me is in those moments, I just need to come back to my own story and be true to my roots. And, I don't have the answers, and I don't think I can lead this platform on my own. I don't think, this platform should just be about one person, but I really think, I just want a place where I can share a piece of my story. And I hope that platform, does that for a lot of people too. So Yeah, I guess I just don't ever want to get to a place where if I have to put the mask on, I can, but I don't want to get to a place where I'm I'm losing out on the true passion and the reason why. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, conversations like this with you really help because, yeah, you do. It does remind me, like, why did I start this? What do I care about behind all
Yeah.
of the other stuff? Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. 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 Sometimes like when I talk to people and like get so personal with them, like when they actually share so personally, it's like bam.
Because you're a good
Wow.
listener. Yeah.
Oh, I very like to listen though, and I feel like when it comes to you, like you were always the one listening to a lot of people, and for some reason, it's like I want to listen to what Shauna says. Like I want to see what she has been living for and how she's been living life to a point where because I always know when someone wants to share other people's stories, they have so much inside of them to share as well. Like because
Oh,
they've been through so much, they know how to
wow.
empathize with other people.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's actually making me emotional.
No, I mean if you need to cry,
Thanks.
girl, you just need to cry
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah, thanks. I think that really helps because it is true. Like yeah, I do care, but yeah, I've also been through shit, and I guess that's why I want to do this is because in the future, if there's someone out there that feels like they're alone, then I hope that this platform shows them that they're not alone, and I guess that stems from a lot of my personal experiences too. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you for saying that.
Wow. Wow. And like as a person, because for you, maybe you're still finding what your life is about to happen. I guess for other
Mm,
people who are like my age or like younger than me, there's still a lot of people searching for their passions. And
yeah.
I feel like when I was in middle school, I've been taught inside of school to find your dream, don't lose your passion and stuff. But nowadays, everyone's talking about jobs or like technology, and it's like if you don't have this amount of money, then don't follow your passion. Like they don't
You
talk
don't have
about dreams,
Bitcoin. Yeah.
right? And I'm just like, what the heck has happened to the world? Like, where is everyone's dreams? And I feel it was so like sad for the next generations. But if you don't mind, like, how have you come to a point to find your passions, and what was dream to you as you were growing up?
Mm. I I realize now it was actually a really long process. You know, I shared a little bit about going overseas, being interested in Myanmar, but you know, even after that, it took a long time. It took years for all those different experiences to kind of come together into what it is now. And when I had the idea for Kozziecom and when I was like, okay, we're going to do this, when I had that conviction, I realized, oh, a lot of the life experiences that I had been leading up to this point. And I think as much as I want to say, like, I knew what I was passionate about, I knew what I wanted to do exactly, like, I didn't. And if anyone says that they do down to the T, um, I would I would call bullshit because I think 90% of the fun is discovering how your passions are going to play out. And I always knew I loved telling stories. I always knew I wanted to study media and that I was interested in, yeah, like telling stories. Even as a kid, I would put on performances for my family at Christmas, and I knew that that's what I was interested in. Um, and I guess my advice to someone who's like, late teens, early 20s would be to experience as much as you can. And I don't mean YOLO, go out and party every day, experience everything. I don't mean mindless experiencing. I mean, really think about what did you do as a kid growing up? What do you enjoy doing now? And what do those experiences tell you about who you are, what you're good at, where you find your energy? And if you can start answering those questions and opening up to experiences that will help you understand those different aspects of yourself more, I think they're incredibly valuable and nothing will ever be wasted. It might not reveal itself until 15 or 20 years later, but you'll look back and you'll realize that's why I had to do this, or that's why I experienced that. Like when I first left uni, I thought, because I had a plan, my plan was I knew what I was going to do, and none of that actually happened. After I graduated uni, I just had like a part-time job at a tech startup. And I was like, oh, I want to be a full print journalist. I don't want to work in marketing. But at the time, that's what was available. And that's the opportunity that was open to me. So I started experimenting with that. And I loved it. And I kept going down that path and following what I was interested in. And now I look back, I learned incredible skills that allow me to work at Kozziecom and do the work that's required for this platform. And those skill sets would have been difficult to acquire had I not had that experience. So yeah, I would just say, like, it's hard. Like, you're right though, you're completely right, Peace. I don't, even when I talk to my brother who's 7 years younger than me, like, he's struggling with these questions, but his biggest priority is graduate job, do well at the graduate position, work his way up, get settled. But there's not enough space for what do I care about, what do I love doing, and that is a sad thing.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah.
How about you? How did you discover what you were passionate in?
I think I'm still on the journey. I'm like you said, oh, oh, like you said, I don't know where I'm going. Honestly, when it comes to dreams, like, because I've been always fed with dreams and passions, like it's not about jobs, but then once going into Korea and like high school of Korea, people are always about money or like jobs and like get good jobs, get good grades. And I was always the one who would go against it. And so I think I found my passion by being rebellious to the society. And I was always the one who would act strange, be the naughty one, but in hindsight, I would always be loved by like the good teachers who would be smart, who would know like that grades don't really matter inside of high school. And
Yeah.
so, and through those stages, like, of course, creative ways were always there. And I always thought that job criteria or like job descriptions, like career wise, that would be the dream. So I would always chase, I need to be something ER, like, I need to be a dancer, I need to be a businesswoman, I need to be a something. But when I come back at it, I've had so many times where I had to let go of my dreams because of like car accidents, injuries, like circumstances and all. And even to today, like there are so many times where it's like, oh, I wish I could do what I want to do. I want to achieve my passion. I want to follow my dreams. But situation and reality doesn't allow me to do so. And so every time I'm just doing passionable things as much as I can, like lab or doing music. And sometimes it hurts me because there's so many things that I want to do, yet reality stops me to do it. But when I see people who lives here doing like having different circumstances than I am, who lives a better situation than I am, but still says, "Oh, I can't do this because of that." It sometimes makes me angry because it's like, "Wow, how can you say that in front of me when my situation is like I'm on a student visa, I'm low on budget, I'm like the lowest of lowest, still trying to like crawl up into whatever form I can."
Absolutely.
But so many people forget about the blessings that they have in front of them. And sometimes it's like, wow, like only if I were in your shoes, I would have done so much better kind of thoughts. But I can't
Wow.
say anything to the people who lives here because they live a different lifestyle. They live and come from a different culture. And so all I can do is just do the best that I can in whatever situation that I am in. So at the moment, I'd say I'm still finding what I can achieve, but it's definitely shifted from a job criteria to a appreciating verb, I guess, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
where what I do
That's
doesn't have
exciting.
to define who I am. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's exciting. I can't wait to see where this journey takes you, even with lab.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. If you were to break down your creative pathways of how you made it till today, like what were the small journeys? Because I think I saw you've had like a lot of passion projects. You've written a lot of stories as well. But what were those little like milestones that you've walked through to achieve who you are today?
Oh, wow. I love your questions. Hey, do you want to write the little milestones? Off the top of my head, I would say there was right before Kozziecom, I was sitting at a cafe at top right, just like, with a blank notepad. And I like to do this sometimes, blank page, just start mind mapping what's on my mind, different ideas, and just kind of think about, let yourself think about anything. And in that activity, I actually reflected back on a time growing up when my parents said to me, so my parents are divorced. And at the time, my mum sort of said to me, hey, I don't think you should tell people that we're divorced or that you grew up without same parents. And I was like, oh, why? Because I'm finding a lot of healing in talking about this in a safe church environment, which is what was happening at the time. And my mom said, people will judge you and you won't be able to get married, essentially. And, she was looking out for me, and she grew up in a very different context, and she would have experienced a lot of that shame firsthand, having been divorced. And I took that, and, in that moment at the cafe, I was reflecting on that conversation. And luckily, I'm like you, Peace. I'm stubborn and rebellious, and I'm a Taurus. So I was like, you know what, Mom? I'm going to do me. And I spoke to, mentors, sisters who had gone through a similar experience. And I found a lot of healing and growth through being able to verbalize. And that's just who I am. And it made me think, I wonder if there are people who have gone through similar things or worse things than I have, like sexual assault or depression or the really dark stuff. I wonder if people who have dealt with really difficult things haven't been able to talk about their experiences because of this shame. And shame is something that's universal to all cultures, not just Koreans or Asians, but we experience it very differently, and we experience it uniquely in the Asian Australian culture, and even more so in the Korean Australian culture because of how tight knit we are. The saying, all Koreans know each other in Australia, like that really feeds into this kind of saving face culture. So I wanted to do this project where I just put a random call out on Instagram. I was like, hey guys, just wondering, have you guys ever experienced this? And I just put like a really basic survey together, put it on a couple of Facebook groups, and overnight, I think I had over 100 submissions.
Wow.
And I remember waking up, just normal day, waking up, going through my email and seeing the responses. And I was like, is this really happening? Like, why are so many, is this a mistake? And as I was reading through some of the stories, I was just mind blown at how open people were willing to be with me. And I hadn't met some of these people I hadn't met at all. They lived overseas and they saw the post and they wanted to contribute. And that was just, I really felt that weight of responsibility and that I owed it to them. And so over the course of the next 2 months after that, I did exactly what you're doing, Zoom interviews with them. They opened up to me. Some talked about sexual assault, some talked about depression, mental health, navigating like their sexual identity. Some spoke about parents, divorce, domestic violence. There was a whole range of different topics, including abortion as well. And a lot of these people were opening up to me, and they wanted to open up because they wanted their story to help inspire someone else. And when I saw this happening at a global kind of scale, I realized, this is the power of stories, and it just affirmed to me as well. And and a lot of these respondents wanted to remain anonymous, and I still respect that completely. But that process of getting their story, meeting them, connecting with them, and I got a lot of healing by hearing their stories too, similar to you in terms of your understanding with your interviews and stuff. Like, that was an incredible process for me. So I guess that sort of was a big milestone for me to want to do something like Kozziecom. And another kind of small things would be the people around me. Like I mentioned, my best friend who's an actor, she's always been really open with her struggles of being an actor who is Asian, and competing for roles with other Asians, and how limited the roles and opportunities are. And I was always really like defensive and fiery on her part. So I think, that relationship was really helpful because, and it still is. And I see creatives around me struggling to, just have their space and their platform. And, these people, like, my best friend isn't wanting to be the next Oscar winning, Nicole Kidman. She just wants to be able to have a space where her talent and her skills and passions are recognized, and that she's appreciated for her context too. And I think that's really fair to want that. So yeah, I guess those friendships in my life had helped inspire my passion for wanting to create this platform.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I guess the last kind of milestone pathway would be I visited my grandma and she showed me a bunch of photos of when she first immigrated to Australia. And my grandma and my late grandpa, they moved to Wollongong with their family and they had all these iconic photos. And she was telling me the stories about this time. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is history. And I don't want this to be lost with this generation. So yeah, that's another kind of key thing. I don't know if I answered your question.
Wow.
I'm just kind
No,
of
I think
rambling. Sorry.
wow. 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 So what are your like plans or like um purpose inside of Kozziecom?
Hmm. I think our mission is really to create a space where people can be proud to be Korean Australian. And being Korean Australian can mean a lot of different things for people. It can be, people like yourself who have moved to Australia, people who have grown up here, born here. It can be a range of different things. It can even be Australians who moved to Korea. Like that could be part of the Korean Australian story. So it really, depends on how people relate to it. But wherever they're coming from, I want them to be proud to be that unique blend of Korean Australian cultures, and that's the mission for the platform at the moment. In terms of plans, like when I started, I was like, yep, this is going to be the strategy, this is going to be the direction, and it changes every time. Like this event that we had was completely random. I just randomly got an email asking to make a pitch, randomly did it, and then it just all lined up. So I'm really curious actually to see what opportunities are in store.
Wow.
And I'm trying not to hold on to it with my like militant hands and being like, this is what we're going to do and this is how we need to do it. Because, like I said, I don't want this to be about me. I really want this to be a space where people can claim parts of it and share and feel empowered to share their own story. So I want to see where it goes. I do have some plans in terms of partnerships, activities, that we can do to make sure that Kozziecom is sustainable in the long term. So yeah, there are a couple of things in the works, but yeah, we'll see. I'll report back to you.
Oh my gosh, so excited.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I really love like Kozziecom, like the name is so like 촥촥부터
진짜 다행이다.
Kozziecom, Kozzy.com,
When I
Kozziecom.com.
first started it, like, to be okay, this is another piece of lab exclusive. I don't love the name. Like, I'm not obsessed with it. Yeah.
What do you mean? I'm obsessed with it.
I'm, yeah, like when I started out, I honestly, I was like, okay, if I don't start this and I don't run with what I have in front of me, I'm never going to do it because there's always going to be something imperfect.
Yeah.
So I thought of the first name that made sense to me. The first logo was like 5 minutes. Everything kind of, I just had to run with it. And I was like, we can change it later, but for now, I just need to launch this. And it's kind of stuck and I think it resonates. So until someone else has a better suggestion, that's what it is.
Did you have a like other top three names of if you were to change it, what would you change it into?
I think we had a couple of suggestions from like the core team who are part of the conversations, but none of it really captured this crossover between Korean and Australian. And yeah, I actually had a conversation with someone. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but when news was getting out that Kozziecom was launching or that we were starting something, someone sat down and had coffee with me, and this person for 45 minutes was trying to convince me why the name was horrible. And yeah, just was like, it's not going to work. Kozziecom's never going to work. And for 45 minutes, I was like, wow, like this sucks because I've just taken every ounce of courage I have to like run with it. And here's someone who's a lot older, a lot more successful, a lot more experienced than me telling me that it's not going to work. And all I said to that person was, yeah, I hear you and I agree with parts of what you're saying, but you know what? I want to try this and I want to see. And it has been working. It's not perfect, but yeah, it has been working. So as long as you guys can relate to it, that's job done. I don't need to love it. It doesn't need to be the world's sexiest name. You know, we're not going to be like a Tesla or a Fenty, but you know, whatever.
That's so true because it's like a platform for like literally Aussie, Korean, Australian.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's like an analog digital thing where it's like .com, like com is like a website thing, but rather
Yeah.
than it being digital, it is digital, but at the
Mhm.
same time in person as well. So I really like the
Mm.
name.
Yeah, that it actually does have that play on like the .com for online, but also com for community. So it's both.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, the name is too good on the.
Okay, I'm glad. We'll
It's
keep
too
it for
good.
now.
Oh yes, don't change it. Don't change it.
Why did you go with lab? Leave it all behind. What inspired that?
At the moment, like around that time, it was when I had to shift. Like I finished music, and then every time in the end of the year, it's always like, okay, what's my next year gonna be? What's my visa status? Am I gonna stay in Australia? Am I gonna leave to Korea? If I go to Korea, what am I gonna do? Like all those
Right.
questions would bunch up in the end of the year and be my uh 선물 같은 거 where I think about that for like the next few months. And it was worse because I finished a bachelor's degree already and then my dad was like, just go to Korea, start a life. And then I was like, okay, like, do I really want to go to Korea? Not really, because I don't think I can re-hustle my life there. And so I was thinking upon my options. Do I want to work? Do I want to be on a graduate visa? Do I want to study again? Where I am not an academic person. Like I've never studied once in high school. It's not something to be proud of, but I have it. But it was a time where it's like, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And the only thing that I can think of was study because that would be the most basic, easiest route. But I'm a person who goes all in or just don't do it at all. And
Mhm.
so I was like, if I'm going to study, might as well do as much as I can because I've never studied in my life before. And I did have this fantasy where it's like, oh, I want to be in the university, college, that fantasy of universities. So I never had that. And I was like, okay, might as well go to a good reputation university. And so I've applied and then I got accepted to UNSW and I'm like, oh, it's a good
Congratulations.
name. Oh, thank you, thank you. But until then I only thought about like the fantasy wise where it's like 대학생활. And so I got in and I was drowning because I got into computer science thinking programming might be a very good route for me to stay here in Australia.
Oh, I see.
But I had no background in math. Like I don't know math. And I don't know what kind of guts I had inside of me, but I walked in to do like math like 대학 수학 when I
Oh
don't
my
even
God.
know 초등 수학, right? And my
Yeah.
dad's like,
Thank-
"Girl, go to TAFE, do 1 year. Like you don't even know 초등 수학. Do you even know what nine times nine is?" And I'm like, "Dad, what do you mean it's 84?" And he's just like, "Huh?"
I can't
And
even
so
correct you. Yeah.
yeah,
Same,
I
same.
had that moment, and it's like, God, like I was in need of wanting to do music. I needed my creative outlet, but I couldn't because I would wake up at 6, go to sleep at 12, and all I could do was study because I had to catch up. And so that time I was
You have
like,
to learn one
I,
plus one. Yeah.
yeah. And I wanted to like interact with people, like needed something. And I've always had that thought of like, I want to get to know more about people. Might as well do podcasts because I like talking as well. And then the only thing I could think of was let's just leave everything that I have and just go forward. And so leave it all behind. And
Love
then
it.
I was doing computer science. So I was like, okay, might as well do a coding thing. So I was
Love it.
thinking we're in a laboratory, we're doing labs. And so it came of
Oh,
lab. And
cool.
so
Love it.
thank you. I think it's the first time I've kind of said that
Oh, on the podcast.
on the podcast and like in person
Really?
as well. Yeah.
Wow. There you go.
Yeah.
Another
Thank you.
exclusive.
This is such a hot episode. What the heck? Wow. Wow. Well, we had the Koreatown event as well, like we were mentioning, and this t-shirt has been made for that event.
You.
And about Koreatown, like you said it was like really random, but it turned out to be so great. Like I don't think anyone would have thought that it was so random, but how did Koreatown event come alive and how was that experience for you?
Okay, so it was, yeah, 100% random. A couple of months ago, so we only planned, actual planning was only 1 month, but the conversation started only 3 months prior. We were approached by the city of Sydney, an incredible person named Grace. She approached us and was like, "Hi, we would like to invite you to submit a proposal to host an event in Sydney CBD's Koreatown." And I was like, "Hell yeah, but I've never done this before. So what do you mean?" And she was explaining the process, and I was like mind blown. I was like, "I've never done anything like this. I've never written a proposal. How do you write a proposal?" And I didn't even understand the steps. So you needed to do an expression of interest. Then, if you're successful, submit a request for quotation. If that's successful, then that's when you actually get confirmation to run the event. So I was like, what? How do I? So I had to learn everything on the go. Thankfully, I had a contact in Brisbane who also does proposals for her council. So she provided some advice. But yeah, that's sort of how it started. Honestly, my idea was really simple. I just don't want to do something that every Korean festival we go to, like, it's great for grandmas, my mom, but like I said, like, there are cool people like yourself, you are, but there's a reason we asked you. Like, there are people around us that are like great, like that are sick at what they do and that are, it's a vibe. And I was like, I wanted to showcase that Koreans are more than just K-pop and more than um just like typical stuff. And the typical stuff is important, don't get me wrong, and there is a space for that. And the council has still funded activities with those traditional groups, and I respect that completely. But yeah, I wanted to do something that was a little bit more fun. Like, when you travel to Korea, like you're in Itaewon or Hongdae, and there's people that are just vibing, and I was like, yeah,
Mm,
like, where is that here? Um, so that was the initial concept that I wanted to run with. But I really wanted a strong artwork element. So we engaged, the local artist, and my brief to him was really simple. Like, we want to create identity with Koreatown, and we want to make people proud of what Koreatown represents. I don't want a tacky sign. I want it to be something we could really resonate with. And it's the year of the tiger as well, which is, the tiger is really important in Korean history and
amazing.
culture. So I was like, if we don't seize this opportunity, then it's going to be such a waste. And the council also, this is their first year running an event like this. And the reason why they wanted to do it was after COVID, a lot of businesses were affected. So they wanted to support businesses in Koreatown. And that's really spearheaded by Grace and her team. And, it kind of goes to show how the conversation is changing as well. People are recognizing that Lunar New Year isn't just Chinese, it's Koreans as well. And the Vietnamese community have their own Tet version of Lunar Year. Um, so yeah, that's sort of how it came about. When I first had the idea, I ran it by a couple of people around me. I was like, yo, what do you think? And they were like, hell yeah, like, we need a space. We just want to do something fun. And it was just after the pandemic as well, where everyone's kind of been locked up. So yeah, that was the thinking. We made so many mistakes, dude. I made so many mistakes. I learned so much. It was so far from perfect. But hey, just glad it happened.
Oh yeah, that's what makes it so good. Like if it was perfect, I feel like it wouldn't have been as good, but because of those imperfections, it's so tasteful.
I think it's really like testament to I really think the artists, you guys really brought it together. I couldn't have been happier with how well you guys rallied because, yeah, if it weren't for you, like if we had divas and we were like, sorry, it's raining, my hair's wet, I can't perform. Or no, sorry, it's no. Like if it was like that, then,
Yeah.
we would not have been able to host a successful event. So really it's the artists who were like, nah, I got this, I can run with this. You guys performed in the freaking rain. Like,
It
bro,
was
I was
beautiful.
hiding out in shelter the whole event.
But it was so good. Like it was so worth it as well. Like I don't know about the whole process and like everyone who were like backstage and like behind operations and stuff, but just me as a personal peace being, Like it was so great for me because like you said, after COVID, there wasn't any events like this, and especially representing Korea to Australian
Mhm.
culture as well. And when we all got together the first day to like kind of run through what the day was gonna be like, I literally knew everyone except for like two, three people. And I was like, oh, why are you here? Or like, oh, it's such a long time seeing you. And it was such a great moment where it's like seeing
Right.
everyone from every culture. And I was like, wow, it was one of those moments where like, oh, it's good that I've been through this kind of experience, although I don't do it now. Cause like when I used to dance, I saw the b-boyers. I used to
Mm,
like train with them in the same environment, different like
yeah.
styles, but and then saw like a few rappers that I know of, and then David I met long time ago, and then it was just like,
So good.
wow, like seeing everything unfold together and being gathered, but then we're all Koreans, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
damn. But on the day it was raining, and we're just like, oh, like because I especially love the rain, but when it rains, my
Love it.
body just completely shuts down. So
Okay.
my body hates it, but the vibe is so good, and I was like, oh, rain, not good,
Yeah.
but
Good.
then like GDC, they were like, oh, rain, it's like chua, like they want to get wet, like it's gonna look sexy. And then the b-boyers were the biggest impact though, because the floor was
Oh,
wet, but
really?
it was like step up, and I'm like, damn, I'm watching a
It was
movie, you
honestly
know?
like a music video. I was like, why are people here? What is going on? It was wild.
It's
And,
too lit.
yeah, it is what it is, hey. But like, I think what was crazy was that we intentionally had a floor stage, and I didn't want an elevated stage. Yeah, because I wanted it to be that's who we are. Like, I don't want to
Mm,
pretend. Yeah, like Kozziecom's not even at that stage. I don't want it to pretend that we were like, some hot shots that we're not. We're still all
hey.
hustling. We're still trying to grow, and we're one community. And I think that when I saw the artists come together, especially like, in the rain, but also for the cypher, that was really impactful for me because I was really worried because, I'm not an artist. Planning something like this, I wasn't sure if it was going to get too political. I was
Mm,
like, if I ask this person, then will that group, will that, and I had to be like, I can't think of it like that. I just want to go with whoever's available, whoever's keen, whoever's willing to be part of the vision. That's who I
yeah,
want to run with.
yeah.
Um, and politics aside, like I just saw the way artists came together. There was not a hint of competition. It
Mm-mm.
was seriously about how do I champion you? And I was like, this is what it's about because in our parents' generation, when they came here, things were difficult. They had to hustle and things did get competitive. But for us as a community and a generation to actually say, you know what, yeah, we could be competitive, but no, I'd rather celebrate you. That was really powerful for me to watch. So
Yeah.
yeah, kudos to you guys.
Wow. I can't say thank you enough, like for exactly what you've just quoted there. Like, yeah, well, us Koreans, especially growing up in Asian culture, we always have that competitiveness. And although we might praise one another in front, like we go behind our backs and be like, oh, I can do
Yeah,
better. Like I'm gonna win you and stuff. But
yeah.
that night, it was so crazy. And I guess another embracement was growing up in the States, like especially being in the hip hop culture in Korea as well. You might say hip hop is like streets, and people would be
Mm,
like, "Oh, we're all streets, we're all chill." But having an Asian background inside of hip hop is not the most chillest
mm,
form. But in Australia, being able to see Korean people, like having a community of Korean hip hop people, artists, just enjoying Korean culture altogether, no matter where you come from, which background, what kind of art you do, it doesn't matter. But being
mm,
there as Koreans all together, like because of
right.
you, because of your vision, because of Kozziecom, that was able to happen. And because of the artist being like one, I think the
Mm,
crowd was able to engage with us as being
yeah,
one Korean culture. And
yeah. That
oof,
was
like
powerful to see.
that was so good. Like that was like it. And we're just like,
Yeah, that's crazy actually.
damn.
That's crazy.
It was. To be honest, like the Youn didn't go for like it's still here. And it's like,
Mm,
oh shit, is it already March? Like it feels like it's only like yesterday since the event
mm.
happened. Too
No,
good.
bro. I'm like, yes. I mean, I loved it, but after a lot of people, including yourself, a lot of you guys were like, hey, congratulations, well done. And they've been asking me like, how do you feel now that it's over? And it's really interesting because for me, the victory actually happened before the event.
Oh,
Um, for me personally, anyway, like, we talk about these crazy experiences as a community, and I think we're going to still be feeling this months later, years later. But for me, the personal victory was, before the event, in the little wins. And so when the day actually happened and it started raining, I think there was inside, I was like, you know what, like, yeah, because I was like, I'm a Christian, so I prayed before like each step of the way. And I was like, God, honestly, I've tried 110%. I've tried my best and I have no regrets, because I know, and you know, the late nights, like the lonely times that I, had to battle self-doubt, had to learn, had to, write 50 pages of a proposal. Like, you know, that's what I went through. And that's not to say I'm doing a good job. It's to say, look, I tried hard because of this opportunity. And ultimately, whatever happens, wherever the cards may fall, it's in your plan. And when that was my, posture going into it. So when it started raining, I was, people were like, aren't you upset? It's okay. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm sure there's a reason, and that's okay. It's not on me. So, like the victories happened, I think, before. There were difficulties too, but the personal victories were much before the actual day of the event. The day of the event was like, yep, we've reached the milestone. We've finally arrived. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was tough.
I can't imagine how tough it would have been, because organizing those events, especially with like City of Sydney being behind Sydney, like public government sectors as well, is not easy to handle. But wow. But I'm so glad that you said like your personal victory came before the event, because if not, you would have stressed on the day.
Yes.
And that would have
Exactly.
like you would have been MIA on the day. We'd be like, where's Shona? Where's Shona? And then wow. Thank you so much though.
No, I don't know. Thank you doesn't feel right for me. It's like, I don't know. I don't
I
like.
love you then. I love you.
No, it's like I don't, maybe not thank you, but like, I don't know. Let's like, not thank you. Not because I'm trying to be fake humble, but because it's like, thank you. It's like, there's nowhere to go from there,
Nah, it's just the beginning though. I think at times you need to accept when you need to accept. Because let's admit, like, because of Kozziecom, everyone came together. Because of
For
that
that
vision
night,
you had. And so
it was a sick event.
it was. It was amazing. It was amazing. Damn. Wow. Wow. Well,
Well, thank you as well, because I 100% could not have done it without the artists, as I mentioned. Thank you for not being a diva. Thank you for hustling, for having your own story to share, for having your own platform, your own passion for the community. Like, that really came through. And like, the team who were behind organizing this as well, like it was Paula, David Park, David Cha, and Lauren, who joined us in the end. Like, they were phenomenal. I can't stress enough. Like, wouldn't have been possible with just me.
yeah. They were amazing people. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really shout
Team
out to
effort.
everyone who's really helped.
Yeah, big shout out.
Damn. Well, another question that I want to ask you, like being someone for being like a listener, what is something that you've learned from being the ear to the unknown and to the unheard?
Whew, your questions are on fire. Hey,
Hey.
not giving me a break at all. One thing that I've learned.
Mm.
Oh, I'm an external processor, so let's see how this comes out. Okay. I was once recently we were approached just via DM. Someone was like, "Hey, I've got two actually. Okay, first one, they were like, "Hey, I want to share this." Sorry, they were like, "Hey, could you write about beauty standards in Korean culture?" And I was like, "Yeah, for sure." But like, how about we actually talk about your experience, because I feel like this is a really personal topic for you. So I, workshopped with this person, and what came out of that was, they had the opportunity to share their story. But when we posted that anonymously, the amount of responses we got via direct message, so not publicly, private messages, people saying, thank you to this person because I felt this and I struggle with this and I feel so seen. And that for me was huge because I was like, this is crazy. Like, this isn't even, about me. It's about these connections that are happening and facilitating like something deeper than, yeah, it was crazy. So I think what I learned through that is, it's going to sound repetitive and corny, but I really learned the power of being vulnerable, authentic, and yeah, being true, because it took a lot of courage for this person. Yes, it was anonymous, but it took a lot of courage for this person to openly, publicly say, look, I don't feel beautiful. And at times, I struggle with my weight and I struggle with this and that. And to share stories like that is incredibly difficult, especially for like, this person identifies as a female. Like, that's really hard, because if, to talk about a time when you've been called fat and ugly, like that's really vulnerable for a woman. So, this person was brave enough to share their story. And I guess that really taught me that the vulnerabilities and the weaknesses that we've experienced in our lives, we can choose to be like, we can choose to own that, or we can choose to hide it. And when we own that shit and we share it, that can be a huge blessing in ways that we have no idea. So I think, it's a real privilege to have difficulties, I guess, in your life. The second is kind of the flip side. I learned that I can't please everyone. Yeah, and that's a difficult lesson I'm still kind of wrestling with. But yeah, I've had a couple of messages and a couple of interactions with people being like, why don't you do this? Or why haven't you done that? Or why can't you do this like this? Or why are you doing that? And those conversations are difficult because as much as I want this to be a platform for everyone, I realized it can't be, and not everyone's going to be happy with it. And I need to be okay with that. And that speaks a lot to my personal kind of, my own struggle with realizing that I don't have to always be performing at 100% for everyone. And I don't always need to be making everyone happy. That's okay. Yeah. So I guess that's what I've learned. Also listening to other stories from people, I've learned just how freaking unique Korean Australians are. I grew up in a church context, so I thought everyone was kind of similar. I was like, yeah, all my friends, like we're all pretty similar. We all go to the same cafe, same restaurants. Our families are kind of similar. Yeah. I was like really familiar, but then I interviewed a whole range of people that are like so outside of what I've ever experienced. And that's really refreshing for me because I'm like, whoa, like you're also Korean Australian, but you're so different to me. And, we've also spoken to adoptees on the platform and their experience is really different. So yeah, I've learned that people are really unique.
Wow. Wow.
Sorry for
That's so
me
good.
again.
No, like especially being in like not a season, but like this era of COVID era and all, like it really stops us from getting to know people, like finding interest in like the bravery to go up to someone and say hi to a stranger and all. But because of like those platforms and those stories, I feel like it gives urge to other people to why not say hi to a stranger, to
Yeah.
have a little rest and be like, hey, it's okay to say hi to a person who's sitting
Mhm.
next to you at a bus stop and stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow. That's so beautiful. Wow. I'm so glad that there's someone out there like you who's like working to tell other people's stories and make other people feel valid, you know? Like there are people who needs to be validated.
That's what
Damn.
you're doing too.
Hey. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I feel really encouraged and
Oh,
refreshed.
that means a lot to me. I hope this can rejuvenate your soul.
Yeah, it has. It definitely has been. Like this conversation's been really helpful.
Wow. Thank you. Well, very one last question that I need to ask you before we end the session is there anything that you would want to leave behind in the lab before you go?
Oh, like don't, as in anything I don't want to carry with me.
Yep.
Well, I want to leave behind the fear of disappointing people. Pretty deep. Am I allowed to say that? Or does it have to be related to my work?
Nah. We can give it an open ending for the listeners to imagine whatever they want to imagine.
Yeah.
Wow.
Typically rated, I guess.
Well, that's it for today's lab sesh. You can find more about Shona on Instagram at Shona Says. Definitely go search Kozziecom at Kozziecom. And thank you once again, Shona, for being our guest today.
Thanks for having me on Lab. Loved it.
Woo! Yeah. To all who are listening to this podcast, thank you so much for tuning in today. Lab is currently available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and more. So you can get easy access to all the links through Instagram. So be sure to join the community on Instagram at leaveitallbehind_lab and see you all in the next episode. Bye.
Leave it all behind. 넘어져도